Welcome to the Pelinero Taylor Show and Martin Seaf Show, Capitals Uncovered, where we talk about geopolitics mostly, but some literature as well. And today we've got an extremely prominent guest who's incredibly well known in the alternative podcast community because he stands up for what is right, basically, rather than what is stands up against power, and that's what we try to do as well. And we're going to talk about things that have engaged me for quite a long time. I've thought about how we're going to run the world if we're not going to be at daggers drawn all the time with nuclear warheads pointing at each other. And one of my book projects was 1961 when Hammarskjöld, the then UN Secretary General, just weeks before he died or was killed, was planning with Kennedy a kind of disarmed world. It sounds incredible, but it's all there in the documentation. And Alfred, I don't know if you might know about it because I've been looking for
I do.
sources.
I do. And what you may not know is that, see, I'm a practicing Catholic,
Hmm.
and Dag Hammarskjöld was a practicing Protestant, a Christian, and he wrote prayers, which we use in our church. Prayers
Really?
written by Dag Hammarskjöld. I can send you a whole series. Is a fascinating man. And by the way, since you already introduced me, I wanted to say something else. I wanted to say I'm just back. I changed my bow tie because I had a black suit and a black tie because I just come from the ceremony in the cathedral of St Peter here in Geneva for a great man. I had the privilege of knowing him for nearly 40 years, and I'm talking about Jean Ziegler, Professor Jean Ziegler of the University of Geneva, who was the first rapporteur of the United Nations on the right to food, and he was also a member of the advisory committee of the Human Rights Council. I'm very critical in my book, The Human Rights Industry, about the lack of independence of 50% of the rapporteurs and the fact that they're a bunch of ideologues and they're not committed to human rights, they're serving others' interests. However, Jean Ziegler was one of my heroes, and I don't have many. And Jean Ziegler just passed away last week at the age of 92, and he was writing till the last day. And his last book was in French. It's called Où est l'espoir? Where is hope? And its answer is very clear. Hope is in the right to resist. Hope is in our sense that conscience requires us to resist oppression.
Mm.
We have to speak truth to power. Jean Ziegler has done that.
Hmm.
John Dugard has done that. He was the counsel who presented the South Africa against Israel case before the International Court of Justice. Richard Falk, the third rapporteur on Palestine, he belongs in this category. Francesca Albanese, by the way, she just coined a word that I liked. She spoke at the ceremony for Jean Ziegler, and she spoke of necro capitalism, so lethal capitalism, what Naomi Klein used to call disaster capitalism because it causes tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of deaths worldwide. So, in any event, notwithstanding my criticism of the United Nations Human Rights Council and of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, I very much honor those rapporteurs like Francesca Albanese, like Reem Al-Salem, like Alena Dohan, like my successor,
Hmm.
Georgios Katrogalos, who are intellectually honest.
Mm.
And I must say, when I think of Jean Ziegler, that was a titan of a man, of a scholar, because he wrote many, many books, but also someone who had courage and courage to spare. So there are people you can still admire
Mm.
in the United Nations system. So,
No,
should
well, we're
the
going to talk about
question,
China and
yeah,
what China's doing in human rights, and we might have a chance to talk about Iran and the Nuremberg laws.
sure, I'll try to be brief.
And Martin will have a few things. But I just wanted to say, when you talked about a lot of people inside the system are ideologues and not very useful, what characterizes them, and are you willing to name any names?
No, you don't want to give the lawyers the opportunity to sue you.
Right.
Lawyers make a hell of a lot of money out of defamation suits, and I never give them the opportunity.
Mm,
But the fact is that I do know many who, shall we say, were put there for a purpose. Not every UN staff member comes in through a national competitive exam. Very many are put in there by missions, especially the senior position.
mm,
Positions that the Assistant Secretary General, D2, D1, even P5 are very frequently parachuted into the system, which for us who were for decades very hardworking staff members, it was
mm,
always very discouraging because you want to have career development, and then somehow then the position that just became vacant is filled from the outside. And the system of recruitment is very, very much in need of reform. And also the system of selection and appointment of special rapporteurs is also very much in need of reform. You cannot expect to be treated, shall we say, impartially if you come with a petition addressed
mm,
to the Human Rights Committee or to the Committee Against Torture. I mean, if you belong to a politically correct victim class, yes, you will have a day in court. If you come from an unpopular victim class, you will not.
mm,
And if you are a small NGO, the Secretariat of the United Nations Office of the High Commissioner will not give you the time of day. You won't be received.
mm,
Whereas if you come from one of the wealthy NGOs, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, International League, et cetera, immediately, I mean, you will get an opportunity of seeing a senior staff member. I worked for 25 years for the office, and I was the chief of petitions, which is registrar. I think all of the petitions ran through me. But unfortunately, the politicization of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights has advanced so much since I left that I know of many NGOs that have presented cases and they have not even been registered.
mm,
Admittedly, that is not within the remit of
mm,
the Secretariat. The Secretariat cannot, shall we say, put aside a petition. I mean, they have an obligation to bring it to the attention of the expert committee. But I know of cases of petitions being not registered, or petitions being sent back to the author, or petitions being simply thrown in the bin. I've seen it with my own eyes. So you see that there's problems that ought to be resolved. And it's not only limited to the United Nations system, it's very much the case also in the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. I have close friends there, and when I was the chief of petitions, obviously I had a lot of contact with the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, and I know that many cases there are either not registered, not processed, and that is because of the funding. You know where your money comes from, and you don't want to anger your donors more than necessary. So these are problems which I address in my book, The Human Rights Industry, and I go back to the sixth satire of Juvenalis, the Roman author, poet, philosopher. In his sixth satire, he asks this question of quis custodiet ipsos custodes,
Yes, yes.
uh, who will be guarding over the guardians? What do you do when the institutions created to defend your rights actually betray you? I mean, these are genuine problems, and I've made numerous concrete, pragmatic, implementable recommendations how to fix these problems and how to reform many aspects of the Secretariat and of the United Nations. I wanted to recommend strongly this book by Richard Falk and Hans von Sponeck, Liberating the United Nations, Realism with Hope. I also wanted to recommend to your readers another book by the late great guy, Joe Schwartzberg. This came out already in 2013. And I took some of his very good ideas into my report to the General Assembly in 2013. Joe Schwartzberg, Transforming the United Nations System. Of course, nothing has happened. Obviously, the United Nations is not very representative of the world. The General Assembly also is very much under massive political pressures and blackmail and arm twisting, etc. Now, this is another book by a friend. This is Killing Democracy. You may remember the book
Yeah,
by
we know two of those guys. They've been on our show, both Finian and Jerry.
Oh, Finian has been in the show. I love the guy.
Mm,
Very good.
mm.
So moving on, it's clear we have done, the United Nations has done phenomenal work in standard setting. The norms that we have drafted and adopted, the mechanisms that we have established are all good, but we have not done anything to ensure enforcement. Now, if you have an implementation gap, who's going to believe in you? You've lost your authority, you've lost your credibility because you cannot help people in need. Now, the United Nations has been notoriously unable to stop the genocide in Gaza. And our Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, has not had the guts to call it a genocide. Our High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, also has not called it a genocide. Although the former High Commissioner for Human Rights, Navi Pillay, head of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on Palestine, in her huge report, documented why it was genocide. And by the way, Navi Pillay, before she was High Commissioner for Human Rights, she was a judge at the Supreme Court in South Africa. And she was also a judge at the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. So she knows what she's talking about. And there are all the reports of Michael Link and of Francesca Albanese. Francesca Albanese is a phenomenon, that lady. I've had the honor of being on 2 occasions with her on a panel, and I'm enormously impressed by her courage. Of course, she gets regular death threats. She is under sanction from the United States. So she has been debanked, as you know, as other people have been debanked. Don't think it's only the United States that has become a totalitarian country, authoritarian country that ignores its commitments under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, etc. Europe is just as bad, if not worse. Here you have a book by my friend Jacques Beau. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Jacques Beau.
Of course,
Jacques
yeah.
Beau, a Swiss intelligence officer, a colonel in retirement, integrity in person. I've also had the opportunity of being with him on various panels. Now, his books are like half a page text, half a page footnote, you see, or at least a third of a page footnotes. Everything is documented, and everything is documented with extremely reliable, truthful sources. 90% of the sources, by the way, are Western sources.
Mm.
He's not relying on RT or Sputnik or CGTN or Xinhua or what have you. He's relying on United Nations documents. He's relying on reports of special rapporteurs, all sorts of really solid material that is scholarly and methodologically correct to cite. And he was sanctioned by the European Council on the 15th of December last. He's been debanned. And extrajudicially, he has not committed any crime. He has not violated any European law. He has just expressed a point of view that does not jive with the narrative that Europe is pushing. And so they accuse
Yeah,
of,
sorry.
of peddling Russian propaganda. Furthest from his mind is to peddle any kind of propaganda. And just look at the footnotes. But in any event, Europe has lost its, shall we say, moral compass. I mean, they are morally bankrupt. So
Well,
your
in the
question,
UK, we're banning everything now. They're going to have VPNs. They're even talking about banning VPNs, and this
and even
banning
you
kids from using
call
social media means everyone's going to have to hand over their ID.
you call your adversary or the person you want to destroy, you call him a terrorist.
Mm.
So if you are fighting against terrorism, if you're fighting against the state terrorism of Israel, and Israel, let's face it, is a country that was born in terrorism, the same as the United States was born in genocide. Our ancestors in the United States wiped out 10 million indigenous. I'm talking about the Crees and the Cherokees and the Iroquois and the Mohawks and the Sioux and the Pueblos and etc. Well, there were 10 million of them running around when the Europeans arrived. By the end of the 19th century, there were 200,000 left. Now, there's a fantastic book on this written by Professor David Stannard, Oxford University Press. Don't think it was published in some little dinky press. No, Oxford University Press. Came out in 1992. You think that any genuine debate came out of that? No. The books of John Mersheimer, take his book on the Israeli lobby in the United States. I mean, this raises questions that go to the very heart of our democracy, to the very heart of the rule of law. I mean, the rule of law in the United States has been so thoroughly corrupted by the Israeli lobby and our congressmen and our senators. I would say that at least 50% of our senators and congressmen are or pursue a policy that I would call Israel first.
Mm.
I mean, you would think that these are our elected officials and they would pursue our interests, not the interests of the Israeli lobby. But open your eyes and see what's happening, see how they're voting. I mean, the litmus test for the independence of politicians and commitment to values and their commitment to their electorate is how they vote. And I mean, the voting record in the
Yeah.
Congress of the United States is a disgrace. Now, you wanted to talk about the Iran deal. I can just
Well, I
address
think
very
maybe
quickly.
we won't have, and I'm going to bring in Martin as well. But I wanted to just ask, how do we make it better? I mean, but because surely, let's say the UN could become a repository for a better world order, but surely the UN has to hitch itself to some real power. I mean, and in
Exactly.
the process of doing that, you've got to do some kind of compromises. Because as you said earlier in your exposition, there are lots of idealists out there, but nothing happens.
Yeah, because diagnosis we don't need anymore. We have them,
Exactly.
and they're good. Uh, you need powerful countries. And I must say, in this case, I'm talking about China, India, Indonesia, Brazil, South Africa. You need powerful countries to realize that the United States and Europe still have an imperial mentality, still have a neo-colonial mentality. And if you want to have true multilateralism, if you want to have a system of global governance based on the sovereign equality of states and not on power, not on sheer bullying, then it is for these countries to take the responsibility. And I've said again and again that it is necessary to BDS Israel, but not only BDS Israel, and for your listeners, of course, I'm talking about boycott, divest, and sanction. Not only Israel because of its genocide, because of its ethnic cleansing uh, for 80 years now, the Nakba and everything that followed, not only for the settler violence and the evictions of the native population of the West Bank, et cetera, but who is financing this? Who is behind it? Who is complicit? Well, first place, the United States is complicit. The United States has provided military, political, economic, diplomatic, propagandistic support to the genocidal state. But not only the United States, also the European Union, and of course, NATO. Now, my organization here in Geneva, I am in the directorate of the Geneva International Peace Research Institute. We submitted two legal briefs to the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. I'm talking about Karim Khan. I'm talking about uh, our legal brief of 24 May 2024 and 15 May 2025. They were registered, and that was it. We presented legal argument that under the Genocide Convention, Article 3, little e, complicity in genocide entails exactly that, what it said, providing military, political, economic, diplomatic support to a genocidal state. Well, certainly the European Union has done it. France continues to do it. Germany continues to do it. Italy continues to do it. And for me, it is obscene to see what happened uh, last couple of days in Evian, France. We had the G7 meeting. So business as usual. I mean, they roll out the red carpet for Mr. Trump, who has committed God knows how many war crimes and crimes of aggression and perfidy, because to have attacked in June 2025 the peace negotiators of Iran. Suddenly, in the middle of negotiations, you just try to kill the uh, uh, opponents. And now we just had the negotiations in Oman and then in Geneva. And in the middle of this, 28th of February, we decapitate the leadership of Iran, hoping that the country would just simply crumble and that we could impose our will on them and install yet another puppet.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't work.
Um,
But I mean, okay, the fact that we failed in doing what we wanted does not absolve us from having committed the crime of aggression, the crimes against humanity, uh, classical war crimes, including perfidy, Article 37 of Protocol 1 to the Red Cross Conventions of 1949. Now, there's no Nuremberg tribunal, and no one is going to prosecute Donald Trump, or for that matter, when George W. Bush unleashed this war on the
mm,
fake pretext that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. And we proceeded to devastate the country, to really carpet bomb it, et cetera, kill God knows how many hundreds of thousands of civilians
mm.
in total impunity. Tony Blair, this arch criminal, walks the streets and, is.
Alfred, I've got to interrupt, sorry, because we've got 10 minutes left and I wanted to bring Martin in. My thought is how, because in the Nuremberg trials, you had victor powers imposing justice on the weaker powers. So it's only if America were defeated that we could impose any kind of justice,
Oh, of
however
course,
justified.
only
But
then, only
sorry,
then.
Martin, what are your thoughts? I want to bring you in.
I agree with you, Pele. Professor de Zayas, you make all these points, you cite all these studies and sources, all from your friends, all very heavily documented. But as you yourself acknowledge, nobody listens to them.
Exactly.
Nobody implements them. How can you get them implemented? How can you change the way things are? You Pele asked you, and you indicated this at one point. I'd like you to go into it in much more detail. There are interaction and balance of power among different nations in the world, and basically whoever has the power, and this is an unfortunate comment on all of human nature. No doubt you will deny it, but you can't even blame it on the Israelis. They do this abusively, most certainly too. But we do it. The Russians did it in their day. The Islamists are doing it everywhere. How do you get the UN changed? You're a doctor. You're like a doctor who's a brilliant diagnostician. You have diagnosed the problem in great and thorough detail. Vastly important achievement. But are there any antibiotics for this? Is there any operations that can be undertaken? How can we get the UN to reform itself? How can we get nations like the United States and Britain and France and the Russians too to agree to what needs to be done? Please.
Only through economic pressure. That's why I
but
said
economic pressure fails. It hasn't worked on Russia.
Yes, no, but I mean, nobody has organized, not even the BRICS, not even the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. No one has organized the resistance. By resistance, I mean the Chinese must realize that they have a certain responsibility for themselves and for the world. The same mindset has not yet reached Brazil and Luiz Ignacio Lula, or has not reached Ramaphosa in South Africa, or Modi in India, etc. When they stop buying F-35s and F-16s from the United States, when they stop buying Boeing and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, when they sell their U.S. Treasury bonds and don't buy any more, and
which
when
the
China,
Chinese have been doing.
well,
the Chinese are moving in that direction.
Not enough. I mean, if the Chinese wants to really squeeze the United States, they stop completely. selling rare earths to the United States. That is a crucial thing that China has to do. I've discussed it with several Chinese ambassadors. I have spoken to the ambassadors of South Africa and Brazil, etc., and say, why don't you, in the General Assembly, bring in a resolution, a so-called Uniting for Peace resolution, saying because the Security Council is being systematically blocked by the United States, it is within the remit of the General Assembly, Articles 10, 11, 12 of the UN Charter, to assume responsibility for international peace and security. Once such a resolution is adopted, then the General Assembly can recommend to states and give them the legal basis to impose sanctions on the United States and Israel, to impose a complete arms embargo on Israel, for instance, and simply to isolate them. The moment that Israel feels the pressure economically, it's not enough just simply to call the ambassador and tell him what you're doing in Gaza is not acceptable. They laugh at you. You have to make them feel it. And you can only make it feel it when you don't buy any more Israeli products or US products. When at least you get the ball rolling. And by the way, the ball is already rolling with regard to the petrodollar and with regard to the process of de-dollarization. The United States has managed to blackmail the world and to, through the weaponization of the dollar, the United States has actually exercised extraterritorial power and affected the internal affairs of countless of sovereign states, but they have not fought back. You can fight back in the General Assembly. It's not just talk show.
Professor, I'm sorry to interrupt. We've got to wind up now. So I'll just ask you one question. You've got a lot of contacts in China, and I saw you mention the Thucydides trap, and it's coined by Graham Allison, Professor Allison, who talked about a rising power versus a mature power. And there's always the temptation of the mature power to squelch the rising power. It happened in 1914 when the Brits squelched the. So, are the Chinese? Do they seriously fear that the Americans are going to strike out against them before they become too powerful?
Yes, they are.
They are.
I can come in on that. Yes,
yeah,
because
sure.
I have had many, not many, but several surprisingly high-level Chinese interlocutors, not so much from official government, but from Chinese media and Chinese commentators in China, who have in the past 5 or 6 years approached me several times to ask for my analysis on this. And I could not claim. Well, I could have claimed, but it would have been false. I did not claim insider wisdom onto U.S. grand strategy, largely because you can't, because there is no coherent U.S. grand strategy. Of course, exactly. It's a chaos. But the Chinese look especially at what happened to Japan in the 1990s, when Japan looked as if it was going to displace America as economic number one. And all of a sudden, one economic bad thing after another happened to Japan. Clearly, you Professor, are familiar with this aspect of the situation. And Japan went on the rocks, and Japan has still not been recovered from these 30 years. And the Chinese feel this is systematic. They connect all the apparently isolated points. They do serious analysis. And they say, now we see the same thing happening to us. And they have read the Western sources. As you know, they have read the Western sources too. They, like you, cite Thucydides. Exactly. They cite Thucydides as well. But again, I find your analysis, just in closing, horribly depressing. because it is so convincing. And again, you are to me a brilliant diagnostician who recognizes the problem. And you could be a brilliant surgeon or recommender of antibiotics too, but your recommendations as to the medical procedures that need to be followed to make the UN transparent, to make the UN credible, to restore balance of power within the UN uh, are very clear, and I think would vastly help the world. But the established interests,
Well,
for those very
and I'm
reasons,
sorry,
block
we've
them.
got to end there. So we've got the
Sure,
diagnosis, we've got some path towards some implementation, but we've still got those great powers. It's a fight, the good fight that we've still got to
exactly.
fight. And Professor, we'd love to have you on again shortly to discuss a little bit more concretely. And thanks a lot, Martin, and see you
Never
tomorrow.
Sure.
give up.
Thank
Never
you.
give up.
Never give up. That's right. Always, always fight for the good fight.